The sterile smell of disinfectant hits me first, sharp and clean, a cruel contrast to the rotten feeling in my gut. My knuckles are white where I grip the armrest of the plastic chair. The air conditioning is arctic, chilling me right through the thin jacket I pulled on this morning. Across from me, the clinic's logo is a soft blue wave, promising hope, new life. It feels like a sick joke. I watch the clock on the wall, every second a heavy tick in the silent waiting room. He's late. Of course he's late. He's always late when it matters. Beside me, a couple holds hands, faces alight with nervous anticipation. I look away. Their hope is a mirror I can't bear to look into. My own hope died a brutal death weeks ago, drowned in a sea of lies and betrayal. I focus on a framed photo on the wall, a baby's tiny hand gripping a finger. The universal symbol. The dream I buried. The dream he stole. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Built brick by painstaking brick. We had a plan, a future mapped out like a comforting, predictable road. Buy a house, maybe 2 kids, maybe a dog. Simple, solid. My days were a rhythm of work, home, him, comfort. Trust felt like the air I breathed. We had a joint savings account, the number in it growing steadily, painstakingly. Every extra shift, every skipped latte, every careful budget calculation, it all went into that account. It was our down payment fund, our future fund, the key to the house with the yard, the space for a child's swing set. We talked about it over cheap takeout, tracing floor plans online, faces close, dreaming aloud. It was the anchor, the tangible proof of our commitment, our shared future. He traveled for work sometimes, long stretches away. He'd call every night, his voice tired but warm. We'd talk about our day, mundane details that felt important because they were ours. I missed him fiercely when he was gone, counted the days until he was back. Trust wasn't a question. It was the foundation. Solid ground. Then the ground just wasn't there anymore. It started small. A strange text notification flashing on his phone screen late one night. Deleted before I could see it. A flicker of unease.
He was tired, he said.
Stressed about work. I pushed it away. We all have secrets, small ones. Maybe it was just a friend, a guy thing. My gut tightened, a knot I tried to ignore. Then the bank statement. An email notification for a large withdrawal. Larger than anything we'd ever taken out. Not from our joint checking, but from the savings. The down payment fund. The sacred future fund. My breath hitched. I clicked the details. A wire transfer. To a clinic. An IVF clinic. My blood ran cold. We weren't trying for IVF. We were saving for a house. And the number was staggering. More than half our savings.
Gone.
I waited for him to get home. The house felt huge and empty. Every sound amplified. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator. The silence was deafening. When he finally walked in, tired lines around his eyes, I held out the statement. My hand trembled. He looked at it, and the color drained from his face. Not guilt, not shock.
Fear.
Pure, raw fear. He started talking, stumbling over words. Work expense. Loan to a friend. Something about an investment gone wrong.
Lies.
Obvious, clumsy lies. My voice was low, steady, colder than I knew it could be. The clinic. The IVF clinic.
Explain that.
He collapsed then, figuratively. Not physically, not yet. But the carefully constructed facade crumbled. He admitted it. There was someone else.
He was leaving.
And the money was for her. For their baby. The baby he was trying to have with her. Using the savings we had built for our future.
For our baby.
The world tilted. The air rushed out of the room. I couldn't breathe. My ears rang. It wasn't just the affair. It was the calculated cruelty. Using our dream, our sacrifices, our future fund, to build a new future with someone else. The betrayal was a physical blow. I remember standing there, numb, while he packed a bag, muttering apologies that felt hollow and meaningless. He left that night. Just walked away, taking half my life savings and every shred of trust one had ever given him. The first few days were a blur of agony. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I just sat in the quiet house, surrounded by things that felt like ghosts of our shared life. Every object was a memory, twisted and poisoned. The couch where we watched movies, the kitchen where we planned our future, the empty space in the closet where his clothes used to be. The pain was a physical weight, crushing my chest. But beneath the pain, a cold, sharp anger began to form. How dare he? How dare he steal from me like this? Not just the money, but the future, the trust, the very foundation of my life. He didn't just leave. He scorched the earth behind him. I contacted a lawyer. A grim-faced woman named Sarah with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened patiently as I choked out the story, tears streaming down my face. She asked for details. The bank statement. The wire transfer recipient. The name of the clinic. "We can freeze the account, but the money is already gone," she said, her voice devoid of judgment. "Just fact. Getting it back will be difficult. It's marital funds, yes, but tracing it, proving intent, it's complicated. Difficult. Complicated." The words echoed in the empty house. It felt impossible. He had taken everything and left me with nothing but rubble. He called sometimes to arrange picking up more things. His voice was flat, emotionless. He acted like we were strangers negotiating a business deal.
No remorse, no regret.
Just a cold efficiency that chilled me more than his betrayal. He seemed to believe he was entitled to the money, that it was his as much as mine, and he could do with it what he pleased. The mistress even contacted me. A text message. Cold, clinical. "He's with me now. Get used to it." My fingers trembled as I typed back, deleting and retyping, wanting to unleash fury, but knowing it was useless. She knew. She knew he was married. She knew about the money. They were in this together. Two architects of my destruction. I started digging. Not for emotional closure, that felt impossible. For facts. For leverage. I combed through old emails, bank statements, credit card bills. Anything. Everything felt tainted. I found a receipt for an expensive dinner, dated a night he was supposedly out of town on business. A charge for a weekend getaway I never knew about. Each discovery was a small, sharp stab, confirming the depth and duration of the lie. He hadn't just strayed. He had been living a parallel life, meticulously hidden. The IVF clinic transfer was the key. Why that clinic? Why IVF? I knew our history. We hadn't had any fertility issues that we knew of. We hadn't even started actively trying yet, waiting until we had the house. Was he infertile? Was she infertile? Why use our savings for this? The questions gnawed at me. I looked up the clinic online. High-end. Reputable. Expensive. The wire transfer amount suddenly made sickening sense. IVF costs a fortune. Our fortune. My lawyer was focused on the divorce proceedings, the division of assets, what little was left. But I became obsessed with the clinic, the money, the why. It wasn't just about the divorce anymore. It was about the violation. The calculated theft of my future. I started visiting the clinic. I didn't go inside at first. I just sat in my car across the street, watching people go in and out.
Couples mostly.
Hopeful, anxious faces. I felt like a ghost haunting a place I should have been going to with him under different circumstances. I started noticing patterns. Certain cars parked there regularly. I ran plates through a database I accessed through a friend of a friend who worked in law enforcement, a small, ethically gray area, but I was beyond caring about gray areas. One car came up flagged under a business name I recognized, a competitor of his company. Interesting. Probably unrelated. I found the mistress's social media. Public profile. Lots of photos. Her, smiling, looking healthy. No obvious signs of distress or illness that would point to infertility issues on her side. Lots of vague posts about new beginnings, exciting journeys, nothing specific. She was careful. One evening, sitting in the car outside the clinic, rain drumming against the windshield, I saw them. Him and her. Walking out of the clinic holding hands. She was beaming. He looked relieved? Tired? I couldn't read his face through the rain-streaked glass. They got into a car, not the competitor's car, his own. They drove away. A cold, hard resolve settled over me. This wasn't just about getting my money back anymore. It was about something deeper. Something about justice, about turning the tables on the architects of my ruin. He thought he had won. He thought he had gotten away with it. He was wrong. I started thinking differently. Less about the emotional pain, more about strategy. He had used the money for IVF. The clinic had received it. What did the clinic know? What records did they have? I remembered something Sarah had said about discovery and divorce proceedings. Financial records. Medical records, if relevant. Was this relevant? Absolutely. The money was marital property. Its use was relevant. I asked Sarah about the clinic records. Could we subpoena them? She was hesitant. Medical records are private. We'd need a strong case for why they're relevant to the divorce, beyond just the payment. But the payment was the key. And the IVF process itself. What did IVF involve? Medical procedures. Tests. Lots of tests. Tests on both partners. Sperm analysis. Hormonal evaluations. All of it. An idea began to form, cold and sharp, like a sliver of ice. He had paid for their IVF with my money. He was planning to have a baby with his mistress. But what if something wasn't right with his part of the equation? I started researching IVF protocols. Standard procedures. What tests were mandatory? What information was required? Most clinics required extensive testing on both partners to determine the cause of infertility or difficulty conceiving. They needed sperm samples, blood tests, the works. They needed to know whose sperm and whose egg they were working with. And then I found it. A detail buried deep in a forum thread about IVF clinics. A common, almost universal requirement. Identity verification for sperm and egg donors. And, critically, mandatory testing of the male partner's sperm even if they plan to use a donor for diagnostic purposes and to rule out certain genetic issues. But more importantly, clinics kept meticulous records of who provided the genetic material. If they were using donor sperm, there would be a record of it. If they were using his sperm, there would be a record of that too. And those records would include test results. What if his lies went deeper? What if he wasn't just cheating and stealing? What if he was promising his mistress a biological child from him when he knew he couldn't deliver? It felt too convoluted, too cruel, even for him. But the seed of the idea was planted. I needed to get my hands on those records. Subpoena was slow, uncertain. I needed something faster, more direct. I made a decision. I would go to the clinic, not as a patient, as someone with questions about a specific transaction. Sarah advised against it. Let me handle the legal aspects, she said. Don't confront them. You could jeopardize the case. But this wasn't just about the case anymore. It was about reclaiming some sliver of control, about seeing the truth with my own eyes. I walked into the clinic the next day. My heart hammered against my ribs. The receptionist's desk was sleek, modern. Behind it, a woman with a kind, calm face. I'm here about a payment, I said, my voice trembling slightly. A large wire transfer. For a patient. She asked for the patient's name. I hesitated. I knew his mistress's name from her social media. I gave it to her. She looked it up. Her brows furrowed slightly. We have a record of a significant payment under that name. Made by... I gave his name. Yes, I confirmed. I believe there's been a mistake. This payment was made using funds that were misappropriated. Her face became guarded. I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't discuss patient information or payment details without authorization from the patient or the person who made the payment. I understand, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But the funds belong to me, jointly. They were taken from a joint account without my knowledge or consent. She looked uncomfortable. That sounds like a legal matter. Perhaps you should discuss this with the person who made the transfer or your attorney. I have, I said. But I need to understand what this payment was for. Specifically, it says IVF. What stage? What procedure? She shook her head gently. I truly cannot share that information. It's confidential. I felt a wave of despair. Dead end. Just like Sarah predicted. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. On a small shelf behind the receptionist, next to a stack of brochures, was a small sign. All patient information and genetic material identification protocols strictly adhere to state and federal regulations. Genetic material identification protocols. That phrase stuck in my head. It confirmed what I had read online. They had to know whose sperm and eggs they were using. They had to test. I went home, defeated but still clinging to that phrase. Genetic material identification. If they were using his sperm, they had tested it. They knew its viability, its quality. And suddenly, a terrifying possibility bloomed in my mind. What if he was infertile? What if he had known all along? What if the IVF wasn't just about having a baby with his mistress, but about having a baby at all, a baby he couldn't have naturally, and he was using our money to make it happen, presenting it as his own biological child to her? The thought was chilling. It fit the pattern of calculated deception. It would explain the rush, the large sum of money, the secrecy. If he was infertile and his mistress wasn't, the IVF would likely involve donor sperm or a complex process using what little viable sperm he might have. Either way, the clinic would have the definitive medical proof of his fertility status. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about a monumental lie he was perpetrating on her, the mistress he had stolen my life for. And the clinic held the truth. I called Sarah. I pitched the idea, my voice tight with suppressed excitement and dread. What if he's infertile? What if the clinic records prove it? Would that be relevant to the divorce? To proving the money was used for a purpose he knew was misleading. Sarah was quiet for a moment. That would certainly complicate things, she said slowly. It would prove a level of deception that goes beyond a simple affair. It could potentially impact asset division, especially regarding that specific expenditure. And it would definitely be relevant if there were any questions about paternity later. She agreed to draft a more specific subpoena, requesting not just the payment details, but documentation related to the specific IVF cycle the payment covered, including the diagnostic test results for the male partner involved. It was a long shot, a deep dive into his medical history, but the connection to the misappropriated funds made it plausible. Waiting for the subpoena to go through felt like an eternity. Every day was a battle against despair. He continued with the divorce proceedings, pushing for a quick settlement, offering a pittance for my share of our remaining assets, acting as if he was doing me a favor. His arrogance was infuriating. He thought he had won. He thought he had gotten away with it. I kept going back to the clinic, sitting in my car, watching, waiting, observing the routine, the staff changes, the delivery trucks, the flow of patients. I learned the receptionist's schedule. I learned the times the lab technicians seemed less busy. I felt like a spy in my own life, gathering intelligence on the enemy camp. One afternoon, a delivery truck arrived, unloading boxes labeled with medical supply company logos. A clinic employee signed for them, a lab technician in scrubs. He seemed distracted, juggling a clipboard and a coffee cup. As he turned to go back inside, a small folder slipped from his clipboard, landing on the wet pavement. He didn't notice. My heart leaped into my throat. This was it. A long shot, maybe nothing, but I had to take it. I waited until he was gone, until the truck pulled away. I got out of the car, my legs shaky. I walked across the street, trying to look casual, like I was just passing by. I reached the folder. It was a standard manila folder, slightly damp from the rain. No name on the tab, just a number code. I picked it up. My fingers fumbled with the clasp. Inside, under a cover sheet I didn't dare read fully on the street, were lab reports. Pages and pages of them. Medical jargon I didn't understand. Patient codes, not names. But as I flipped through them, one page caught my eye. Headed Semen Analysis Report, and next to it, a patient code. Underneath, a series of numbers, charts, and medical terms I vaguely recognized from my research. sperm count,
motility,
morphology, and highlighted, circled in red pen a note. Severe oligospermia, consistent with clinical diagnosis of primary male factor infertility. My breath hitched. Oligospermia, low sperm count,
severe,
primary male factor infertility. He was infertile. He had known. He must have. These were standard tests. He had stolen my money, not just to have a baby with another woman, but to have a baby he was physically incapable of having naturally, a baby he would likely present as his own biological child, built on a foundation of lies and theft. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From a cold, white-hot certainty. I had the proof. Not just of the money, not just of the affair, but of the lie underpinning his entire scheme. I took the folder. I knew it was wrong, probably illegal. But I didn't care. He had taken everything from me. I was taking back the truth. I scanned the documents immediately, sending them to Sarah. Her response was swift and stunned.
Oh, my
God, her email read. This changes everything. Armed with this irrefutable medical proof of his infertility, obtained from the very clinic he paid with my money, Sarah amended our legal strategy. We weren't just fighting for asset division anymore. We were fighting against fraudulent misrepresentation and the deliberate misappropriation of funds for a purpose predicated on a fundamental deception. Sarah scheduled a hearing, a settlement conference ostensibly. His lawyer was there, looking confident. He was there too, smirking slightly, radiating that same cold arrogance. He looked like he had already won. The mistress wasn't there, thankfully. The air in the conference room was tense, thick with unspoken animosity. My lawyer, Sarah, was calm, her face unreadable. His lawyer started talking, presenting their settlement offer, a derisory amount that barely covered my legal fees, let alone my lost savings. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching me with that smug expression. Sarah waited until he was finished. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but cutting through the air like ice. Mr., his name, regarding the large sum withdrawn from the joint savings account and transferred to the clinic name, IVF Clinic, she began. His smirk faltered slightly. My client has acquired documentation regarding that transaction. His lawyer interrupted. Any payments made during the marriage from joint accounts are subject to normal asset division. This isn't a normal payment, Sarah cut in, her voice hardening. This payment was made to a medical facility for a specific procedure. And my client has reason to believe that procedure was pursued under false pretenses, based on information obtained from the clinic itself. She paused, looking directly at him. His face was pale now. The smirk was gone. Specifically, Sarah continued, holding up a document, a clean copy, thankfully, of the semen analysis report I had found. My client is in possession of a medical report from the clinic name, Clinic, dated shortly before the wire transfer, pertaining to the male partner involved in the IVF cycle paid for by Mr., his name. This report indicates a diagnosis of severe primary male factor infertility. The words hung in the air. Infertility.
severe.
His face crumpled. It wasn't a slow realization. It was instant, brutal understanding. The smug confidence evaporated, replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. His lawyer sputtered. You can't introduce medical records. That's a violation of privacy. They're not relevant. They are absolutely relevant, Sarah countered, her voice ringing with authority. These records prove that the funds were used for a procedure that was necessary because of Mr., his name, S diagnosed infertility. This is relevant to how the marital funds were used and potentially misused. It also raises serious questions about whether the funds were obtained under false pretenses or used to perpetuate a fraud, not just on my client, but potentially on the other party involved in the IVF procedure, if she was unaware of his condition or relying on him as the biological father. She placed the report on the table, sliding it towards his lawyer. His lawyer stared at it, then at his client, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He just stared at the report, his eyes wide, unseeing. The color completely drained from his face. His breathing became shallow, ragged. He started to make a sound, a low gasp, like he'd been punched in the gut. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Only a choked rattle. He clutched his chest. His eyes rolled back slightly. And then, slowly at first, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, he began to collapse. He slumped forward in his chair, knocking it slightly off balance. His body went limp. He slid towards the floor, his lawyer scrambling to catch him, calling his name. He had planned everything so meticulously. The affair, the exit, the theft, the new baby, the new life, all built on a foundation of lies he thought he controlled. But he hadn't factored in one thing, the clinical truth. His own biology, laid bare by the institution he had paid with stolen money. The room was chaos for a moment. His lawyer was shouting for help. Someone called 911. I just sat there, watching him, the man who had broken me, now broken himself, not by my hand, but by the weight of his own deceit finally crashing down on him. There was no triumph, no joy in the moment. Just a cold, empty space where the pain used to be, now filled with a profound sense of finality. He wasn't collapsing out of remorse or guilt over what he did to me. He was collapsing because his carefully constructed world, his future with a mistress, his lies about the baby, had just imploded. He was blindsided by a truth he thought he had hidden or could circumvent. And it destroyed him. The paramedics arrived, a blur of activity. They worked on him, talking in low, urgent tones. They carried him out on a stretcher, his face ashen. His lawyer followed, looking shell-shocked. Sarah stayed with me. The conference room was quiet again, except for the distant wail of the ambulance siren fading away. "Well," she said, her voice quiet. "That was unexpected." "Unexpected for him," I replied, my voice flat. "You have him," Sarah said, her eyes sharp. "Completely. This changes everything about the divorce, about the money. The court will not look kindly on this level of deception. Not with medical proof tied to the misappropriated funds." She was right. The legal battle shifted dramatically. With the medical records proving his infertility, his use of the funds for IVF was now framed not just as an expense, but as an attempt to create a child he couldn't naturally, using stolen funds, potentially deceiving the mother about the biological father's identity. The judge was sympathetic to my case. The stolen money was recovered, ordered to be returned with interest. The asset division was heavily skewed in my favor, compensating for the emotional distress and the fraudulent nature of his actions. The mistress, when confronted with the truth of his infertility and the source of the funds, reportedly ended the relationship. His carefully built new life crumbled overnight. He survived the collapse, medically. But something in him broke that day in the conference room. He was a shell of the man he had been, his arrogance replaced by a defeated, vacant stare. He never contested anything after that. He just signed whatever his lawyer put in front of him. The divorce was finalized quickly after that.
Clean break. No fanfare.
Just signatures on paper. I got my money back. Not just the amount he stole, but more, enough to start over, truly start over. The house fund resurrected. But the idea of a house, of a shared future, of a family built with him, that dream was gone, irrevocably. The money sits in a new account now. My account. Just mine. It feels heavy, tainted by the way it was saved, the way it was stolen, the way it was recovered. It's not just money. It's a monument to betrayal, a testament to the fragility of trust. I still think about that day in the conference room. His face as Sarah spoke the words. The look of utter shock, the dawning horror, the physical collapse. It wasn't revenge, not in the way I might have fantasized about in my darkest moments. It was simply the truth I uncovered, the truth I armed myself with, the truth that struck him down harder than any weapon I could have wielded myself. I didn't win in the way I ever wanted to. I didn't save my marriage. I didn't keep my family together. That future was erased the moment he made that wire transfer. But I won my dignity back. I won back the financial security he tried to steal. And I exposed the lie he was living, the lie he was building a new life upon. I don't know what happened to him, or the mistress. They vanished from my life, became footnotes in a painful chapter. The clinic continued its work, promising hope to other couples, unaware of the silent drama that unfolded within its sterile walls. I'm building something new now. Slowly.
Cautiously.
The trust isn't easy to rebuild. The scars are deep. But I have the money and, more importantly, I have the clarity.
I know what I survived.
I know what I'm capable of. I was knocked down, but I got back up.
I didn't just survive, I fought back.
Not with fury, but with cold, hard fact. And the truth, it turned out, was the most devastating weapon of all. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.